Stories. Take it.
So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Five Count Podcast. My name is Big George, and we are here with
Jack Edwards.
Mr. Edwards. How are you doing today?
I'm feeling great. I'm excited. This is
So let's kind of get into it because I know for the first time everybody's kind of looking at this like the roles are reversed. More likely you see this man doing all the talking, but today you're gonna hear the mouth of the South. It's my turn. So now that I'm here to kind of interview somebody we always kind of hear talk, but we don't understand who we're really talking to until we get a chance to really talk to them. So my interview for you guys today is going to be none other than the Jack Edwards himself. Because I feel like this man, you know what? We all have like, seen some of the people who come on to the show. Shout out to Ben McCauley, one of our guests. Really, really good guy. Hope to see Ben
oh,
again.
we had a
Man.
great day last night.
That was a good show. But of course, he brought Ben on, and he's going to bring on a couple of other guests. And you probably wonder where these people coming from. Well, we have a man right here who does a lot of these interviews and a lot of these different types of things behind the scenes of a wrestling event. And I want y'all to understand who we're really talking to here. So my interview today is going to be Mr. Jack Edwards. So introduce yourself to the people, as Mr. Jack Edwards would say. Give us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Do we want to? This is in a wrestling vein. So do we want to talk? I want to kind of channel it that way and how I got into wrestling.
Um, I want to. So you know what? Let's do it like this. Let's do it like this because I know for a fact that you have a very long history of wrestling,
Yeah, it's
but
sort of.
it kind of has to go through phases. So we kind of have to see exactly where did Young John get his inspiration from. Like, where was Young John doing things? Like, what did Little John do to get into wrestling?
Well, I got into wrestling because of my dad, who most people know, but passed away last November. And my dad was a longtime fan as a kid. So one of the famous stories of my dad was my grandfather owned a restaurant that I think was a close by to Maple Leaf Gardens. And my dad went in there. My dad was a big kid. He was like 230 at like age 13.
Mm.
And Yukon Eric came in the restaurant, saw my dad, and my dad was kind of looking at him. He just picked my dad up over his head and just like boom. Like, and Yukon Eric was he was a famous wrestler at the time. And my dad watched on TV. So it was the Maple Leaf Wrestling Show out of Toronto, which was promoted by the Tunney family,
Mm-hmm.
Frank and Jack Tunney. And they did shows at the Maple Leaf Gardens, which was a fantastic old hockey arena, just so much energy there. And so they did it out of there. My dad loved the stories. My dad loved the Sheik, like the original Sheik, like Sabu's uncle.
Mm-hmm.
He was fat, nasty as heel. He'd watch it with his aunt. And so he just loved wrestling and like always loved it. And my sisters never really liked it. They weren't into it. I was born in 1980. And so when I was like 4 years old, my dad said, I took you to, I guess I had been watching it. My dad's like, I took you to the toy store, said you could get anything you want. And he thought I was going to get like a remote control car, a model train, because that's kind of more his thing.
Yeah.
I grabbed the Hulk Hogan action figure.
Of all people.
Yeah. Okay. Like, so the first guys I remember really liking was Hogan was it. Like Hogan, and it was perfect, right? I was a 4-year-old kid, and like I was the market. I was the target market. And so he took me to our first event, Maple Leaf Gardens, and I wrote this story. It's the WrestleMania. It ran in the Globe and Mail, which is a national newspaper in Canada. It ran in a thing called Facts and Arguments, which is where they kind of get reader submitted content. I was in journalism school, so I have a teacher who helped me craft this because she's like, this is a great story about my history in wrestling. And it ran the weekend of WrestleMania 18 in Toronto, which was super weird, awesome. And so the story goes that I think it was my Uncle Don who knew some guys who knew one of the ushers. So they were able to get us backstage. And the first door we go into, The guy opens the door. I don't know if it was the locker room. I kind of remember it was being a locker room or like a bigger closet or something. They open. King Kong Bundy standing there. And he looks down at me and he goes, "Rah!" And I take off crying. And I was a tiny kid, and I just remember he was as big as the sky. He was huge. And so I take off crying. My dad thought, that's it. He's never into wrestling. Every week. Every week. I was like 1 o'clock on Saturday, 7 o'clock on Saturday, 1 o'clock on Sunday. Thankfully, like my dad was I'm so fortunate. Like I speak about my dad, and I was lucky. Anything I was invested with, really, he was going to be invested with. He was going to do everything he could. So like when I was talking to my buddy Oliver, who he was one of my, he came over and we played with the action figures, and that's where the commentary thing started. I played with the action figures and Big Gorilla. And, but we went to shows, like we always went to we took me to watch WrestleMania 5 on closed circuit in Owen Sound, which is a town 45 minutes. Yeah, away. We went to Exhibition Stadium in 1986 for Hogan versus Orndorff. Like 76,000 people there. It was ridiculous. Like it was insane. And I've just been lucky that I've been able to go to these events. Like I shared a picture on Twitter last week with Sid. Like we went to Brantford and we met Sid. So I've just always been in wrestling, and I think. Like my mom was a real estate agent. My dad was always an entrepreneur. Like we owned a campground when I was a kid. He had a snowmobile business. Like he was always he's always trying to sell stuff. He was an upholsterer. Like he did a lot of things entrepreneurial. And I think I got that. I went into journalism, but so how I got into wrestling was, if I can just continue, I'll just take it.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, this is the thing. You got into wrestling that way, but it sounds like you watched every week to make sure King Kong Bundy got his ass kicked at some point in time. That's what it sounds like. I don't know.
The interesting story about that was I tried to book King Kong Bundy. I did. I tried to bring him in. And
that would have been great.
He contacted me. He called me and we had a conversation. He's like, "John, I thank you very much." He's like, "But I'm not really flying much anymore." He wasn't. He was like, "Oh, okay, no problem." And I said, "Thank you." And I told him that story, and he chuckled. He's like, "I did my job." And he was like, so I had a great experience with King Kong Bundy. But anytime I was playing Hogan Bundy always lost. Bundy never won. Bundy never won a match. But like he was like, my dad thought it was it, but like I just loved it from the beginning. I don't know. I love my wife, obviously, and that was the first thing I ever remember loving as a kid was professional wrestling. Like I loved the Blue Jays after, started getting to them, but wrestling was a constant. Like I wasn't the most popular kid all the time, largely because I was a crazy wrestling kid. But I had a good group of friends who loved wrestling and kind of got me. Like my friend Oliver was talking about, he was like, I just saw him and he came to the show. I saw him in Walmart wearing a Dusty Rhodes t-shirt. And he's just like, we have great memories of being in the basement, just fucking banging around in the wrestlers. And, just like, that was it, being a fan,
So will you say, grabbing action figures from actual experiences from wrestlers to actually meeting some wrestlers that you never would actually say, that was my favorite at that point in time. I just think that, you have a very, very interesting history and lineage with it, as far as the start. Now, of course, growing up as a wrestling fan, that kind of leads to different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the experiences when you were older that kind of led you to continue to be a wrestling fan? Because, of course, at some point in time, there's always that one person in our life that comes through and says, wrestling's fake. Fuck them. But at the end of the day, it's always us kind of living our dreams and kind of living our lives. So, like, what are some things that kind of kept you going as a wrestling fan?
You know what? I was a fan. Like, here's the thing. Like, I was like, obviously 80s wrestling, WWF, because that was our local show. We got WWF, and then we later got AWA on TSN. We got Stampede. We got another indie fed, I think, out of Calgary at one point. If you had cable like we did, you got the TBS. You got TBS in like.
Okay.
And WWF, but WWF was king. And so I watched everything. It didn't matter what was BC All-Star Wrestling. Edge talks about BC All-Star Wrestling in his book. It wasn't great. It was not good, but I was like, yeah, okay, why not? It doesn't matter. I mean, like, so I was always that kid. Like a lot of my friends were into wrestling. I was really into wrestling. Like, but I never stopped. Like, even when the new generation era came around, like, and people kind of started to get out of it because it was too cartoony. I was still in. My buddy Matt, he was the guy. We went to shows at Brantford Civic Center. There's a picture of me, Savio. I think I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, me and Savio. Like we met Sonny.
By the way, in that picture with Savio, y'all, John was the flyest white kid I've ever seen in my life. Let's keep going. I don't know what the hell his style is doing now, but as a kid, John had it. I don't know what it was. He had the.
I had the Chiefs jacket on.
He had a Chiefs jacket on. He had like the Chiefs starter jacket, the old ones with the pocket in the front. I'm talking. John was fresher than what he actually knew. But we're gonna keep going because he didn't realize it. He didn't realize it, but you know.
But no, so Matt and I had to give a shout out to my friend Matt Parker. We went to all these events because he lived like right close to the Civic Center, and so we would just go down there and wait. These guys would show up. I have an autograph from Scott Hall. It's just Razor. And it's funny because the moment he got out of the car, he did yo Helmsley, your car stinks, man, and it was like. We're like, we know it's a work, but like I always respected that he was like doing the gimmick. Signed Triple H, signed Davey Boy Smith did not sign for us. We thought he was going to, but he didn't. He was kayfabe, right? He was kayfabing us, which I love. I respect. Bob Backlund was the best. I was like, can I have your like autograph? And Bob Backlund's like, what's the capital of Peru or something? Some asked me some question. And it didn't go. And it was, he's like, no, you answer that right, you could sign. And I was like, that's hilarious. So that was fun. And I have like autographs from that still. Like, I don't display them because I have no place to, but I still have them. I'll keep them. And, you know, those are great memories. And then the Attitude Era, like, again, I was the right ages. That was right. I was the perfect age. Like the Attitude Era, 16, 17, 18 years old. We shows. Matt and I would go. We went to the Toronto show 2 nights before the screw job and read in the paper on the Saturday that Bret Hart was leaving. We're like, what the fuck? He's gone? And then went to Barry's town, 45 minutes away. It's like the bigger city. It's like 150,000 people, which isn't a lot to some folks, but that's a bigger town. Yeah, and they have an OHL hockey team. So that was like the first WWE event there. And we were rated at the rail. It was really cool. I like Dude Love was I remember Dude Love was in the main event. So I always watched it in through college. College again, Attitude Era. It was wild. I freaking loved it. So, and I always went to shows though. That was the key. I always went for a long time. I stopped going around. I think the last one I went to was like 2009. I think I went to an NXT show, maybe at later than that in Barrie. It was pretty good. But like I stopped going, but I went to a lot of cool shows, so I could go on forever with that. But like,
gotcha. Yeah. Now, of course, with you growing up, now you have a nice little lineage of how it kind of got started.
Yeah.
Now we're at the point to where you're working a little bit with some of the folks that have been in the business, are in the business, working on and off. Tell us what you do now, and kind of let us know exactly how it's still happening for you in a way.
Well, right now I'm involved with Rock Solid Wrestling. I like to say I'm the assistant to the traveling secretary for Rock Solid Wrestling. I do a lot of different things. I do a lot of design work for us. So Rock Solid Wrestling is we're a company, but like last night's event, we donated all the proceeds to Special Olympics because Great Karma, awesome organization. Amazing night. But there are shows that we do, like we sell to different places, and there are shows that we do to make money, and we're trying to really produce a TV show because our stuff is good. Our stuff, and you have guys like, we have guys like Cody Deaner on our show, Crazy Steve, Eric Young, and these guys are these guys are professional wrestlers. This is their job. And if we weren't good at what we did and we weren't respected, we wouldn't have these opportunities. And we were respected in large part because we're owned by a guy named Tornado. And at one point he'll come on this show. But Tornado is he's a pro wrestler, and he's been doing it since 1996. And he had a lot of he did a lot in 2000, 98 to 2003. Did a lot of dark matches with the WWF, WWE. So he was doing a lot. He worked a lot of guys, and he's super well respected because he's really good. He's the best wrestler you've never heard of. Absolutely. And I wish more people got an opportunity and to share his story, because he's also the nicest guy in the world, the most honest. He's generous. He wants to make wrestling better. That's his goal. And that's really his ultimate goal right now. But I was the first time I ever saw Tornado. He worked Steve Corino in London, Ontario for the NWA heavyweight title. And I forget how long he went, but I remember I saw him there. And then I had got into promoting, met a guy through the newspaper business, started doing stuff for him. My friend Graham kind of broke off from him. I helped Graham. And then through there is where I met Tornado, because I was kind of booking matches and I didn't really know what I was doing. And that's the one thing I'm happy and proud of, is that I kind of know my lane and stuck to it. Because everybody, when they start a promotion, wants to be Vince McMahon.
True. This is true.
And you can't be, because no matter the level, guys are taught to not nobody's disrespectful, but it's I don't really know. So I understood that. I started to get that. And a lot of that was talking to Tornado, listening to him, because he's so well respected by the guys. Because listen, there's no more, he's the most unselfish guy. He doesn't care. His goal is he wants to be a wrestler. And he is a professional wrestler. I don't care. Everybody can say, he's in, there was a group of people, a group of the folks, wrestlers, that met after I shared a picture on social media. And they were kind enough to take that for me. And it was really nice, because I wanted to commemorate the night, because it was his birthday. And he impacted almost every person in that photo in some way. He has been a mentor for a lot of guys at my level, and I get to work with him day to day, because I do a lot of graphics. I like to say I'm his consigliere. Yeah, I can't really pronounce it, but you know what Billy Crystal, the movie with Robert De Niro. I'm fortunate to learn from him, and I think I've learned a way to, as a non-wrestler, because I tried a couple times. I did a couple training sessions, and I just when I was a kid, I got a couple bad concussions.
I'm just saying right now, I'm not laughing in your face.
And I'm as a mattress. I found my role. I know my role, and it's that's what I'm doing now. Is I do promotion. I do a couple towns, Collingwood and Angus, which are all for Special Olympics. So that's and I love doing it. It's just the Special Olympians, when they come, they're just so excited, and they're so into it, and just giving them opportunities in any way to because that's what we believe, we're athletic. Not me, but as an
industry, yeah.
As an industry, we're about athletes, and being athletic and treating themselves like athletes. And I think and so we like to support groups that are athletic in vein. And the Special Olympics, it's we used to support all these other groups, and every time the Special Olympic athletes were the ones coming to the show. I'm well, if we're going to support somebody, why not? Let's support them. They're supporting us. And then you go to their banquet, and Cliff from Reliabuilds is huge. He helps us a lot. He's a big sponsor, and he's really, because you go to their banquet, and he's you see them so excited to get their certificate of and it's just they're just excited to do it, And Cliff is why are they getting a certificate? He's I'll just buy them all medals, and I think this year bought them all trophies. That's kind of guy Cliff is. If he dives in, he's in. So and he's helped a lot. But it's a cool experience, but all stems from Tornado. And he's a smart guy, and he's a principled guy. Like he has a family. Really, like his wife is the best. She's the nicest. She's like the nicest person in the world too. And so he was never going to not be a family man. He's a great family man, but like he's got an amazing story. But that was really all about him. Last night was all about him because it was his birthday, and I was like, I want to do something nice. And we had this great sponsor, the Beaver and the Bulldog in Collingwood. I had a burger. You're not going to get this. It was so good. It was like a really thick patty with pea-meal bacon. Remember I told you about pea-meal bacon?
Go with pea-meal bacon.
Yeah. With the cheese and the mushrooms. And but I knew we were going back here because we had worked it with him. But I knew it would be an intimate spot because they were going to stay open just for us, which was cool. Mm-hmm. But I knew the food was amazing. And I was like, well, let's do something special for the main event. And we had
John's frozen again. He's coming back. Hopefully, I guess he can come back. Bring him on back. When he's frozen like this, he looks like a politician. I feel like I'm arguing with somebody who's like running a campaign or something. I think he's slowly coming back, ladies and gentlemen. I think he's coming back. It's almost like he's teeter-tottering the line of being right there.
That goddamn hamster on that wheel running the wire.
There he is. Look, I knew he was coming back.
Anyway, so I don't know where I was, but no, I was like, we had Crazy Steve coming in, and Crazy Steve is on TNA Wrestling, and if you really, I'm going to try and watch more TNA. I'm going to work because money's always tight for us, but I'm going to work to try and get a TNA Plus subscription because Eric Young was putting that over. You know what? Like, I can't watch it, but I have a lot of people on there that I like, so I'm going to tune in, I think, more to TNA now because I think they're doing a lot of good things. But he's coming in, and Cody Deaner's on there all the time, and he's been our champion forever, so he's a regular with us, but still a star. And then it's like, I wonder if we get Eric Young because Eric Young has a connection to Crazy Steve. He trained him. Jake O'Reilly, he trained him. And Jake O'Reilly's our guy. He's been with us since the beginning. He's a local boy and a hell of a guy. He'll be on the podcast in a couple of weeks. He's a great guy. So we have him on one side. We have a guy named Anthony Darko, who's a hell of a wrestler. I really wish he got more opportunities. He's a great wrestler. Just in the technician in the ring, always hits his spots. He's not big. He's shredded. Like, he's not big, but he's like really good shape, but he moves well. He's the type of guy you could put in with anybody, and he really likes – I love him, Darko. He's a great guy, and he really moves he really works well with, like, unique opponents. Like, we have a couple of guys used to have a guy who were big, and, like, you would put him in there with Darko, and he would work well with him. And he's a great worker. And Tornado, who was also in there too. Tornado is the veteran, the best bump taker in the business. He does a thing calls it Joe Boo, and he runs the guys here in the corner, and Tornado runs at him, and he goes up, and he basically goes ass over tea kettle, and it's just like he does it every match, and it looks unbelievable, and it probably is killing him because it looks like it kills him. But he and Eric Young started together, like on the Indies. They knew each other back then. They were real close friends. Eric Young trained Jake O'Reilly and Crazy Steve. Cody Deaner's kind of been – he's always worked with us. So he's worked with all those guys. But they hadn't all worked in kind of the same match. And I know Tornado has kept saying there's a lot of history in that match. And even like Crazy Steve was like, it's a match that's never really going to happen again. And it's like you have all – and Eric Young was like I said he's Kevin Bacon because I knew Tornado was good friends with him and Jake O'Reilly, but I never met him. And class act. Really great guy, great storyteller, loves hockey. Oh, man, he's a huge hockey man. He's pulling for the Stars too, but he's not He's pulling for him, but I mean,
Go
he's not going to
Stars.
not cheer for the Oilers. He's like, I cheer for everybody. I was like,
He's
no way. I
a
think
Cowboy fan. That's
more
fine.
fans like him. He's all in. He just loves the sport. Like he just loves it. And you hear what I'm talking about. He's like he loves it. And so I'm glad we have an ambassador like that for hockey because he's super good and like treated me with great respect. And but the thing about Eric Young was he came out and he had his like vest on and he had this like gladiator helmet. I hope somebody got a picture of it. He walked out and the people like, what? They just popped. If people didn't know who he was, a lot of people did. They knew he was somebody because he was, and that's the thing I love is like we produce a show of that quality. We produce a national level show in Collingwood, which is an hour and a half north of Toronto. And it's a small town with a nice history in wrestling. And I'm able to be involved in that. And it's just super. It's really, really cool. It was a great night. And like the co-main event, our buddy Asher ended up in the diaper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He did the champion of our group is Scotty the Body. And I'll tell the story about Scotty in a bit. But Scotty's got face paint. He does the face paint, Sting-ish, strong as a bull, just an ox, man. And he had Ben up. And Ben's a bigger guy, and he had him up and just in the suplex and just put him down. And Ben ended up in the diaper, and and everybody loved it. Like Ben, he put on a show, that's for sure.
So in these moments, I would say you're more than living the dream. I would also say that you're kind of like living your own version of everything that you kind of went through. Like everybody who's done all the work up until the point that you got to actually see it for yourself. Now you get to work the behind the scenes. Now you get to do that. So I think that's pretty cool within itself. But
my figures story. I always made matches. And so and now I don't book everything. We have a guy who books it. And he'd be a gentleman named one of my favorites, Jake O'Reilly, used to kind of be involved in that. And he was really, really good. And he kind of really knew what our crowd was. And our crowd was an old school crowd. And we could present an old school product. Like it's physical. We're physical wrestling, but we're good, solid wrestling. But we don't mind a gimmick or two. And but we're old school. And we believe in that, like kids and families still, that you could still produce great wrestling and target that. I think WWE's showing it. You can. Like, that's who we want. We want kids and families because we're raising money for Special Olympics. Like we're not blood, guts, and gore, man. We're wrestling, but we're not. We don't need the blood, guts, and gore. You don't necessarily need, except one incident, which is very, very awesome. That's the only time we had a little blood, but it's in a cool way.
Right, you gotta draw that stuff in. Yeah.
But it was it's really cool to be a part of, and it's just like for me as a kid who did that, I come up with some of the main events, like a couple years ago when we came back from COVID, we did our first like Royal Rumble, and I was like, I think that'll work. I think that'll help us because we had always brought in, and we're gonna get into some of the bigger names we brought in a second. So we have always brought in bigger names, but like. You're raising money for a charity, so you want to make sure you give as much money as you can to that charity. Right. And these guys have been great, and they've been excellent draws and excellent experiences. But I'm like, I think we got to start showcasing our own guys are good enough. Like I think we can draw with our own crew. They're good enough, and we did. Like we draw with our every year, and people know our guys. Like people know them. We do other shows in the area too, so people follow us, and we put on good wrestling. It's really good value, and that's why I put out there. Like I know Dustin was saying about AEW. I'm like, but if you're a fan, like go to your indie, and like you'll be able to tell right away. Like I'm not a big fan of the violence and the hardcore. That's not me. And then but look at the people on the show. Are they? Do they look like wrestlers? Do they look like they're in shape? Do they look like they have gear? Do they look like that's what you're gonna find? And there's a lot of those out there that do it right, and we're one of them. I'm proud to say that. We're right.
I love it.
So, and we work with some cool guys, like really like dream guys, and it's and we haven't really had many negative experiences at all.
So, with that being said, now that we know a little bit more about John, a little bit more, I want y'all to understand, like, this is something that happens year round. So it's not something that he does once. It's not something that he does just for the fun of it one time to say he did it. I think, the dedication shows exactly what you really want to do with the business and how much you actually care about being a part of the business.
Mhm.
That kind of goes into its own light within itself. But this is the top 5. So how do we transition? How do we pivot? How do we move real quick?
I'm
I'm
gonna.
gonna tell you how. This is what I'm gonna do. John, we're gonna give you a time to go ahead and list the top 5 experiences in wrestling for you.
Okay, but before we get to the top 5, we
Okay.
have to start with the honorable mentions, and because there's interesting stories I have
Definitely.
with each guy.
Definitely.
I think,
Definitely.
and I want to highlight because we've been really fortunate in the guys we brought in, the more legend type guys, that we've had a lot of really good experiences. I don't really think we've had many negative ones, and that's awesome. And these guys are coming in, and they not only help us raise more money and draw more money, because I think all these were charity shows, but they they help our guys. They're in there. Our guys are able to ask questions, and they've been able to come up. So the first one I want to tell is a famous story, and I have a name in the business, and I've hesitated to tell this story, but my wife says, like they only ribbed the one. I've been, obviously being an outsider, being a kind of a quirky kid, and he's a little off-centered. I've been ribbed a few times. And, it is.
You, I would say a couple more than what I would say I have.
Ribbed a few times. So I was in a van once. I was driving a group of guys to Timmins, and Timmins is 8 hours from basically where I am right now. And it's not the end of the world, but you probably see it from there. It's a long haul. And I had a van, and one of the reasons why I was going was one of our shows, 2 weeks from them, we were bringing in Bret the Hitman Hart. And Bret the Hitman Hart was on the Timmins show. Okay. And I was like, this is a great chance for me to get an interview, get a photo with him, like to promote. And I was like, say, can I do that? They're like, yeah, no problem. So I said, I can drive to Timmins. I had never been on a wrestling road trip before. So I believe the night before we were in North Bay, we were in Huntsville, and we did a show. I worked with a guy in the business, Highlander Robbie of the Highlanders from the WWE. He was a guy I worked with. A character, a really good promoter, and a good wrestler too. Like he was a guy, like when you talk, like he was good. Like he was a good sized guy. He had been on WWE TV, but he was a character though. He was great to work with though. He worked hard promoting these shows. And again, we gave a lot to charity, and but we did a show on that night, and then the next night, and then we drove to a town called North Bay where we stayed. And then we go on to Timmins, so we kind of broke up the trip. I think that was the trip anyway. But I was driving, and in the van was Scotty the Body, who's our champion now, Cody Deaner, Sean Spears, who's on NXT, Jake O'Reilly, and I believe a referee, Derek Morningstar.
So you're the only person who
isn't involved in the business, except as a promoter. Like they knew me as a promoter.
Like inside ring. Yeah. Everybody else has been inside the ring.
Yeah, and they were all close, right? So I was kind of, and I'm awkward, man. Like I want to try and fit in, and I should do that less because it never necessarily works out. But I was like trying to maybe impress him a little bit with what I liked in wrestling, and I said, I'm a huge fan of the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. A huge fan, and I love Ricky Morton. I think he's fantastic because, like, you watch Ricky Morton sell, it was an art. There was an art to it. So I'm driving, talking about Ricky Morton, and I believe it's Cody Deaner from the back says, and I love Cody, and he's he's an awesome guy. This is just hilarious. I have to tell it. He said, "Hey, John, when you're at home at night, "Do you jerk off to Ricky Morton matches?" And I'm like, "Yeah," and get jizz all over your hands. And then it was my dear friend Jake O'Reilly who said, "Yeah, you're Johnny Jizz Hands."
Johnny
So inside the business, and like I was like, okay, and I knew it, like just like, okay, well, that's it. All right, no problem. Roll up. I kind of learned to roll these things, and it was said with, but it's become more like the more I've gotten to know these guys. Like I was very new. I didn't know a lot of them. I didn't know Cody at all. Like it was
Like, were
very.
you ever offended about it as far
No,
as
not
how
at
they
all.
really
Never.
or
Never an offensive thing. I never felt. I thought it was like, oh, this is what you do, right? Like you kind of got to initiate your way in, and like Cody, I don't want this to paint Cody in a bad light at all. Cody is like one of the kindest people. Like he's a great guy, but it's funny. It's really funny, and it's my nickname in the business. But now it's said with such an affection. It's like it's a hey Jizz Hands, hey Jizzy, Jizz Mania. But like, oh, hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. What happened?
I don't know what happened. I hit a thing, but I've been able to go into the business. Like I've been able to really, I've been able to talk to these guys who have been in the business for years, and I think I've earned their respect in how I promote and how I take care of things. Like, I mean, I know that they're there to have a good time, have a good show. I want to have them have a good crowd, and I want us to have the best. And like a guy like Cody Deaner is one of the best guys. Like and a guy like Jake O'Reilly, who's a dear friend of mine now, is like these are good wrestlers. Like these are guys like Jake O'Reilly's been to Japan, you know. So you know, like so. But Johnny,
is a tough gig.
We brought in Jake the Snake Roberts. And this was shortly after Jake started to get his life together. And my Jake experiences are positive. There's nothing but positivity with Jake. And Jake bought everybody dinner after one show. And
nice guy.
Jake bought everybody dinner. Jake was in with Cody, and they tag teamed, and they did the DDT. That was Cody's thing, and like it was great because it was a cool moment. And then, but we're at the Boston Pizza, and they're telling him. I think it was Bill said his name's Jizz Hands, and they told him the story, and he's like, he got a chuckle. And I think we were walking or leaving, and Jake said, "Come on, let's go, Jizz Hands." And I forget who it was, but it ended up being my wife who said, "Well, if Jake the Snake calls you Jizz Hands, you're kind of Jizz Hands." And
your name is Jizz Hands now. So
that's kind of where my story with Jake. I got to spend the next day with Jake at a sports card show because he didn't have anybody with him to help him. And I said, okay. And I mean, I saw Jake. Jake's a huge baseball fan, and there were some guys signing, and Jake was excited. But I saw Jake see kids in wheelchairs and give him like shirts and really took time for kids. You know, really had a soft spot for kids. A hilarious guy, just funny, and it was cool that he got his life together. I had a couple of times with Jake where we had experiences, and Jake was good. So, but that's the Jizz Hands story, and that's what people call me now. And you know, even my wife sometimes is like, I drop something, she's like, "Oh, Jizz Hands," you know, like. And
you kind of have to kind of embrace it. You kind of have to look at it like you say. It's one of the it's like a initiation into a group that they're going to be
exactly, and that's how I took it, and that's how I take it now. Is like that's if they I respect them a lot. I respect wrestlers. I try and make sure that the experience we give them is a positive one. I want to shed them in a positive light. I do all the posters for our shows, which I love doing. It's one of my favorite parts. And I mean, my goal is like, yeah, these guys are pros, man. Like they might not have the name. Jizz Hands is hilarious.
Johnny Jizz Hands, that's my boy.
They might not have the names that necessarily people know a lot, but like they know that like when they come to see us, they're going to get a quality. And like these guys working with Jake is great. So I went to the bank once with Ted DiBiase. He had to go to the bank, and I walked in and I snapped a photo. And I was like, this is fucking hilarious. I'm going, I went to a lumber yard with Hacksaw, and DiBiase was another great guy. He donated $800 to the hospital at Bracebridge one show. There was a kid who was born, a kid named Ethan. It's one of my best favorite things. Ethan was born with, I believe, cerebral palsy. But he had a brain bleed when he was a kid, but loved wrestling. And we did shows for Ethan. And you want to talk about like, and he would like, they're trying to raise money to get him the surgery so he could walk. And he's now happy to report he's walking. And his mom and dad are salt of the earth people, just good, real cool people. And Ted took time for him. But you want to talk about Cody Deaner. Yeah, man, like Ethan liked him, and Cody really, really took time for him. There's a moment where he's like in the ring, and Cody's like doing a promo before the match, and he's like, Cody, and Ethan says, Cody Deaner, I got your back. And like, Jesus, everyone's crying because I think it's so sweet, and it means a lot because you get to know these people. And we raise money for Ethan's family, and so Ted took time for Ethan. I know he was happy about that, and Ted was a nice guy, a really, really nice guy, great storyteller. Told a story once of how Andre, they were in Japan, and that he and Andre got in the thing, and they were crowded in this elevator, and all these tiny Japanese people were like of this high, and Andre farted right in these Japanese guy's face. I'm like, that's so sorry, I'm gonna run through these quickly because I think I want them to be mentioned. Tito Santana was awesome. I can't like Tito was great. He's a great guy. Did we tell the story with Ben? I think we told it last week about Tito in the lawn.
Tito in the lawn.
Yeah,
yes.
like just instantly, just a really great sense of humor. Like it just and he was good, and he would do anything for us, and he was great. He really appreciated. He was really good to deal with. Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he was the first guy. We had done shows on our own, and then I was like, let's bring in a name. Let's bring in a name guy. Let's bring in a bigger name. And the first guy was Duggan because we've done some shows with Duggan before, and he's a class act. You want to talk about class acts in wrestling? They don't get it. Like Jim Duggan's as good as it gets. I went to 2 lumber yards with Jim Duggan. So one of we did the show for charity in Bracebridge, and we raised a ton of money and drew a huge house. Jim is over. Still, like to this day. And he was still wrestling then. Booked him, and he's over, and he's great. Like he's Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Like, but so I went to the lumber yard because they were sponsoring. It's like Jim Duggan in a lumber yard. So one of the things was we'll do a video.
How many 2x4s do you think he just kind of bought and ran through? Like how much wood?
We went to so this lumber yard. They supplied him 2x4s, and he signed them. Like that was the thing. And I think he gave a bunch of money to the charity that we were raising the money for too, because Jim's that kind of guy. And so, but we're doing this video, and Jim's like, I said, I don't know, what can you do? He's like, I got it. And he's got this video. He's like, I'm looking for a left-handed board, and he's going through this box of 2x4s, and it's just like bam, bam, bam. I'm like, Jim, so he was a pro, and anytime anybody worked with Jim was great. So, but I went to the lumber yard with Hacksaw Jim Duggan. One of my favorite stories, and is I never brought this guy in. I wanted to, and there's a couple people on the list that I really wanted to bring in, but it just never worked out, you know.
Right.
But so one of them was Scott Hall. He was one of the dreams because Scott Hall is the coolest wrestler alive. You know, like and the way you do this sometimes is you get an email. Hopefully you get an email to deal with the guy directly because that's usually the best way. Mm-hmm. But you have to go through an agent. You never bad experience at all. And so, but I emailed what I saw on Twitter was Scott's number, and he emailed me back, and he's like, yeah. And obviously we know Scott had history, some issues, which he, ultimately defeated. Mm-hmm. But because of that, coming across the border, I think was going to be difficult. I think that's ultimately why it never happened, just because we didn't have the infrastructure really to kind of work that. It was a real process. But I had a couple email exchanges with Scott, and I noticed instantly he didn't know who I was. He didn't know where this was. But he was immediately saying, here's how the show could be better. And I was like, wow, okay. That's awesome. Because I'm like, Yeah, I'll take the advice from Scott Hall. So I had explained to him kind of what the normally the name did. Usually they manage somebody, or they definitely come out, sign autographs, and Scott, of course, like, price was super reasonable for a star of his kind. He was totally within reason. I don't think that was an issue, because again, another one of those guys that would have drew, like Scott would have drawn huge. So I mean, you kidding me? But one of the things he said that was interesting was about managing. He's like, listen, I don't come to the ring with just anybody. And I was like, wow, I love that. I love the fact that a guy that knows his value. And that's the one thing you see about Scott Hall when he left and made money in WCW. He knew his value. Like, he always talked about it. And like, I saw an interview, I think today on Facebook, where he was like, I was a babyface, you could leave laying, and they still chant razor, razor, razor. So, and I appreciated that, and I appreciated the exchange, but we were never able to get it done. But now that he passed away, I still have that email exchange, and that's my kind of Scott Hall. And I look at it as such a positive, interaction. Like, he was like, well, maybe you could do this, because before he said that, he's like, well, maybe I'll come out and I'll do this. I'll put over the town and the promotion. And he's like, I think that would be a better way. I was like, fucking sounds good to me. Yeah. Awesome. That's great. You're Scott Hall, whatever you want to do is amazing with me. Like, anything you do, but
anything. Look, I put it to you like this.
Yeah,
just your presence is just probably more than money at times.
The people that had dealt with Scott had positive experiences, I think, when he kind of got his life, and even before that, like, they had positive experiences with Scott. So, and I look at that as positive. I got to drive Tony Atlas for about an hour and spend a bit of time with Tony Atlas. Tremendous guy.
No.
Yeah.
How we got to rewind this, because of course you can't just walk in to say, "Well, I walk in and met Tony Atlas." How did you get in the car with Tony Atlas? How did that
the guy
happen?
Part of me is a guy. He based out of Orangeville, Ontario, which is the same town that Edge and Christian are from.
Okay.
And so he was a promoter, and he kind of broke me in. I was doing things for him, ring announcing and this and that, and I look at back as positive. He really kind of got me, and we had a falling out because I went with my friend Graham, who was more close to, and we kind of had a falling out. But he did put me in there, and I looked at what he did and kind of took positives, negatives, and as you do. And but he brought in Tony Atlas, and he's like, "Hey, how about you drive Tony back to the hotel?" I said, "That's great." And so again, he gave me these cool experiences, so it's amazing. I also met a guy. Quick story: Tony worked that night. A guy named the Notorious TID. And he's probably come up a couple times in these podcasts. I talked to him on Saturday, and he's going to do an episode. He is the host of Live Audio Wrestling. He's got a lot of awesome stuff, and he's a great guy. Huge Eagles fan. Really good dude, though. He was like the first guy I really met in of the indies that I really, because through Chris, this guy Chris, who was a promoter, he kind of worked with Tid. So he was working Tid that night, but he's like, why don't you drive Tony back? So Tony told stories, and I'm not going to say some of them, but Tony was a great guy, just uber positive, and just treated me with like such respect, just appreciated that I was giving him a ride. And he's like, I remember him saying, I don't want to do a bad Tony Atlas impression, but I was always told, hey, when a man gives you a ride, you appreciate it. And I was like, thank you, Tony. And great story. And we went to we were going to go to this bar, and I had to get going, but I was like going to go into the bar. I went to the bar with Tony Atlas, and I was like, oh, that's fucking awesome. And he was like, and people's like come up to me. He's like, that Tony Atlas? I'm like, yeah, it's Tony Atlas. And he's like, John, go get my wrestling bag. Yeah, there's pictures in it. And he's handing out pictures to everybody who's there. Just handing them out. And then I said, Tony, I got to go. He's like, okay, no problem. He's like, his hotel was right there, so he could walk back. He was fine. And then I think that later that day, or maybe the same time, I got to go to the gym and see Tony, and see Tony put 500 pounds on 500 on the bar and do it a few times, and then put 565. He is enormous. He was huge. Like, he was really big, but he was hilarious. He was a great guy. And then the other one that didn't make the top 5, unfortunately, and this is no slight on the experience. Oh my God, Demolition. Demolition was great. Like, I was a kid, a huge Demolition fan, and and he, my friend Oliver and I were big Demolition fans, I remember. And so to book them, I worked with Axe, and it was really, really, it was easy. We brought both him and Barry Darsow in. We did a tag team tournament for our crowned tag team champions with Demolition on the outside. Scotty the Body, who's our champion now, as I've said, there's a cool picture floating around that with Smash and Scotty both putting on their face paint, and it's taken in the mirror. It's really awesome. And I know Scotty was a big fan of Demolition, and so it was cool. They got to work. He was working with Rob Rage, who passed away earlier this year. Tremendous guy, and they were the Bash Brothers, and I named them proudly. And because they're both big dudes, huge guys, and they were good. They were really, really good guys, but had the face paint. Rob did the face paint like Road Warrior, like a Road Warrior. Why not? Of course, let's pay homage to the greats, like Demolition type thing. And they did this thing in the ring, like McGuire and Canseco. And I said, they should call them the Bash Brothers, because look at them, they're huge, and it was great. They won the tag team belts with Demolition. McCully got smashed with a chair by Axe, but I remember you couldn't meet two nicer guys. And the one thing I remember is they were big. Like, they were tall. Like, I can only imagine they were young and thick. Whew. Man. But Barry Darsow is the nicest guy you've ever met. Like, super nice. Like I can't, just unbelievable. Just was happy to be there. Happy to meet people. Bill Axe was just, again, super nice. A little quieter, but great, great stories, and really good with fans. And that's kind of what you want, right? When you're planning these events, you want somebody that's going to be good with the fans, because that's why you're bringing it in, because you want people to have these experiences. What? My hometown and me, Jake the Snake, Demolition? What? And raise money for charity? Yeah, I'm all in. And Demolition was great. And there's the cool thing with Scotty, and we did the tournament and the tags. It was just a cool night. So, unfortunately, the top 5, I think, is one of these in the top 5 isn't a wrestling event experience that I've organized, but it was amazing. So, let me know if you want me to hit it.
Of course I do. But at the same time, we gotta get to this list, because I feel like this list is gonna be more juicy than what I think.
Yeah, not gonna be juicy, but it'll be good.
See, the thing is, you've lived these moments already. You can't say they're not gonna be juicy to us.
Yeah,
You've lived these moments. Look, nothing tops what you've already done. I mean, of course, you do something else, and then of course you live in another. It's almost like asking a celebrity, "What's your most famous moment?" or "What's your most famous moment?" It's like, of course, I got like a million of them, but at the same time, to everybody else, that seems very extravagant. So, kind of like I say, we're going into this list because I think some of these moments might be just a little bit more juicy, but then what we actually think.
Yeah, so, I spent a lot of time with some of these guys.
Okay. Don't sell yourself short. Give me exactly what you got, starting with number 5.
Number 5. So number 5 is we brought in Ken Shamrock.
Okay.
And we were going to bring in Ken, and it was I had the idea of having because we didn't know what Ken was going to do, but we had Ken as a manager, and Ken was going to manage Cody Deaner against Jake O'Reilly, and it was more of a submission match kind of thing, and emphasizing submission because Jake O'Reilly is I believe he's a black belt now in jiu-jitsu. He's brown piece, but I believe he's a black belt. I believe he got it because I remember congratulating him. So he's a real submission guy too. And I was like, come on, O'Reilly, Shamrock, it worked perfect. And then, of course, O'Reilly had McCully in the corner. So he was a little bit on the side. But Ken was a great guy, really, really chill, huge, man. Like, Ken was ripped. Ken was in great shape. But I started talking to Ken, and he was a big sports fan. That was awesome talking to Ken. And that was the time that the Raptors were kind of like, they were rolling. They were starting to roll. Yeah, because we brought in Tito, I think, somewhere down the line, like the next month. That was the year the Raptors won the championship. And but talked to Ken a lot about sports, basketball, football. Ken was into it. And Ken did. So Ken got physical though. So like we brought Ken in and he like suplexed McCully and suplexed somebody else and was in there and he liked our group too. Again, another guy who really liked our group and because again we put him in there with really experienced guys who were really good wrestlers and just a phenomenal experience. Like came out for dinner, hung out with us afterwards. Same with Demolition. Sorry, I didn't tell the Barry Darso story quickly.
Okay.
Barry Darso, they came out and drank beer and had pizza with us afterwards because the pizza place was a sponsor. And Barry Darso's, hamming it up, and he comes over to me and he puts his arm around my shoulder. He says, "John, doesn't get much better than this." And so he was just great. But so Ken hung out with us, and Ken was super cool. He was super cool, and everybody loved him, man. Like he was just. The next day, I had great breakfast with him, and really got to spend some time with him. And he's one of the good guys. He really was, and it was a fantastic experience. So that's number 5.
Okay.
And this is not because this is actually we'll just keep going.
The reason why I was going to ask you. So this made number 5 on the list.
Yeah,
it's Ken Shamrock, and of course, being a fan of Ken Shamrock myself, I know that it's really hard for a lot of people to kind of understand, Ken Shamrock. People kind of take a little bit of a dig at him sometimes because, they don't like some things. But me personally, I've always seen him do things in the ring, in both rings that he was actually in. And, kind of be able to kind of translate, the physical aspect of UFC to a wrestling ring and still kind of be able to kind of wrestle a little bit and still kind of be considered one of the baddest wrestlers in the land. Kind of tough to do. So
awesome.
Definitely love the fact that you got an experience.
He took a great bump. He took the bump of the night, and Ken was into it. Ken was great. But this list is just kind of where they fall. All these people were awesome experiences. So number 4.
Number four. Let's see what you got.
Mick Foley. So
what happened here? Talk to me.
So there was a pizza place called Pie, and there was a manager there. She was just a really super cool, nice person. And her husband, Justin, was a musician and knew Mick Foley. I don't know what the connection was. But so they're like, "Hey, you do wrestling? Yeah. Would you like to bring in Mick Foley?" I'm like, "Yeah, of course. Are you kidding me? Mick Foley is just I'm like, what? Yeah, of course. How?" And of course, Mick, we worked out a deal, and that was easy for everybody. Mick was very, very generous, of course. Mick's a real generous guy. And I didn't spend as much time with Mick as I did with the other guys, maybe, because just Mick drove himself from Pittsburgh. And the story about Mick is he shows up and it's May, but it's freezing cold. Yeah,
it's Kansas, so
it's freezing cold, and Mick's like, "Thanks for the weather." I'm like, "Sorry, Mick," but if you can imagine the excitement of our town, that line was so long to get into that show, to see Mick Foley. I don't know. I think we drew 900 people, which was as much as we could do, and Mick signed forever, and people got to meet Mick Foley. Are you kidding me? And he was amazing with people. Just took the time to make sure they had a great experience. Donated a bunch of his merch sales to the Special Olympics. But the cool thing was Mick was involved, and Mick was happy to be involved. You could see he liked working with young people. So the main event of our show was Rosemary, who's on TNA, another TNA connection, with Mick Foley in the corner against Lenny Lilac. Love Lenny. He's a manager, a bigger guy. They used to call all the kids called him Fat Elvis because he looked like he got out of the bear. He's a big guy. And his charge was Casey Spinelli, who I was with last night, who is the best unsigned women's wrestler in the world. One of the great injustices in wrestling right now is the fact that she's not on national TV. Look up Casey Spinelli. She's worked with the best. She's great. Personality, she's great. She looks fantastic. Her work is like she's got it all. I don't know why she's not on national TV. It befuddles me. But they were in the main event because we were like, like it was a cool. I think Rosemary was doing the gimmick where she was like she came out with a hatchet. And that was the only blood, because that was her gimmick, right? But it was like it wasn't in a like Jason, I'm gonna kill you type. Like, she knew how to do it. It was a great gimmick. She's great at it. She's unbelievable. Rosemary's a great wrestler. Another person I've had great experiences with. Just a really, really nice person. And she kind of started with our group and then worked her way up, and a great athlete, just a really, really good athlete. Like this, I have nothing but and KC is just, again, like I don't know why. She plays a mean cuss, but she's a sweetheart. Like but again, she's like she got that Sherry-ish type wildcat in her. Right? Yeah. And I think she's really, really. I don't know why. I wish, but she's a great person. But they were in the main event, and Mick pulled out Socko, boom, and the place went bananas. And so Mick was involved and happy to be involved. He was happy. I remember Tim saying, I was happy I was able to work with Rosemary. And from the guy's experience, Mick was great. I didn't spend a ton of time with him, but my experience talking to him, he was fantastic. And so I have that. I mean, that was Mick Foley, for goodness sakes. Like, wow, this is crazy. So that was really cool.
So, when meeting Mick Foley,
yep,
do you have to approach him kind of prepared to take on one of the personalities? Do you kind of feel like I'm going to get a little bit of Mankind, I might get a little bit of Cactus Jack? I got to be afraid of Dude Love coming out.
When he hit the ring, he was Cactus Jack. But backstage, behind the scenes and dealing with him, he was Mick. He's class act. He's what you hear. I mean, like. There's nothing like I walked out and I met him. It's Mick, John Edwards on the promoter. I exchanged with last night. He's like, wonderful to meet you. And he's like, thanks for bringing me in. And happy. And he was happy to be there. He's happy to talk to people. He treated people real well. Like that's why Mick's revered. And like, just like, what a guy, what a talent, just like everybody knows Mick. So I was really, I was thrilled to work, to be involved with him. It was great. So.
I love that. I love the fact that you have an experience to kind of go off of with Mick Foley.
Yeah.
Because everybody says Mick Foley's a great guy. I can't hear nothing but good things about him. I've seen over the years him being a good guy. So I think that's pretty cool that you actually had your own experience with him.
Yeah.
So let's kind of keep a pin in that, because I want to kind of circle back to that when we talk a little later. But got to move on, because number 3 has to be pretty big to surpass a little bit of Mick Foley.
Number 3 is the one that didn't involve a wrestling night Collingwood event, but it is, and this is one of the guys that we were never able to get booked. But here in Collingwood, we have a group named the Collingwood Film Company, run by a guy named Jesse Cook. He's a really bright guy, really ambitious guy, and he's produced some cool movies out of Collingwood. Scarce, they've produced like a bunch of other ones. Like they continue to produce movies to this day. But the one I was involved with was a film called Monster Brawl. And Monster Brawl was the premise was it was all these monsters like werewolf and like Frankenstein and that sort of thing in a wrestling tournament. And the movie had a lot of great people in it. Jimmy Hart was in it. He messaged me the day I was in Toronto, unfortunately. He's like, hey, Jimmy Hart's on scene. I'm sure he'd love to meet you. I was like, oh, Jimmy Hart. But the day I was there was Kevin Nash was in the movie. And Kevin Nash paid
Colonel. I love Nash.
Colonel Crookshanks, who was like a manager. He was a manager. And he was in army fatigues. And but I walked in, and the other guy in the movie was Kurgan. Remember Kurgan?
Yes, big, tall,
guy. I mean, oh my goodness! Like you talk about another class act, but huge. Like holy crap, he's a giant. But just the sweetest guy. But Nash, I walked in, and I said, "Hi, I'm John. I'm an extra. Hey, I'm Kevin." Not, he didn't.
Of course.
Yeah, he was professional. He didn't expect me to necessarily know who he is, but he was like, very nice. And I said, "Oh, I know who you are. I'm a big fan of yours." I said, "I just watched your match with Brett," and and then got to be around him when he was talking to different guys, and he was sharing great stories. I mean, he's a great storyteller. If you've ever, he's just he's a brilliant guy. Number one, he's really, really smart. You get that instantly. You could tell the moment you, he's the ultimate of when I say, you could got to get a sense if somebody's going to be good on camera. If they're not always, but for the most part, if they're good in a regular conversation. Kevin Nash in a regular conversation is he's just so engaging. Brilliant guy, smart guy, super nice, super chill, everything you would expect. He's just, so I got to spend and talk with Kevin Nash. I can't even tell you everything we discussed. We discussed some WCW stuff, some of the movie stuff. Brandon was there. Sorry, I got to get through these comments.
They going.
Yeah, Brandon was there. Brandon, I think, was helping Mick or was close. Then Mick called me Jizz Hands. No, Mick did not call me Jizz Hands. I don't know. I don't know Jizz Hands. It existed, but I don't think Mick called me Jizz Hands. But yes, the picture with Nash. I'll explain that. So he was eating. They brought him his meal, and he had 2 steak dinners, and had a few glasses of wine, and he was sharing some stories and telling me at WCW. And I remember working with Ray. Yeah, Brandon's one of the guys who was helping Foley with his merch and helping people direct him, and so he got to spend a bit of time with Mick. So he'll know how good Mick Foley was. But so Nash was and he was great. He was just an easy, chill guy, just telling great stories. And I always admired Kevin Nash. I always liked him as a wrestler. And I just, in the interviews, he's one of the best guys when you listen to shoot interviews. He's one of the best. It's, he was one of the best because he's just so engaging. He's just so, a great dude. And so I loved working with Nash that thing, but I don't want to spoil the whole movie, but nonetheless. So the whole thing was I would play just a zombie. And there's a picture floating around. I got full makeup. It was full, it was Hunter FX, I believe, is the company. They I mean, my God, I had a pus wart or something like that coming on my head. There's a picture. I'll post some pictures on social media.
They probably could. They probably could, Brandon.
There's a funny picture with Shamrock I have of my wife and my kids with Ken Shamrock. And I posted afterwards saying, "This is our new family photo. This is me." And Ken's Ken is in great shape. I was like, "Oh, dude, he's in great shape." And so I had that one. And Brandon has been there for some of these, so he can verify. But no, Nash was just super awesome and a guy I always admired. And one of those things, it was a great experience. And then in the end, I was a zombie. I bit Nash to turn him into a zombie. And then afterwards, put him in. We were going to try and I had a Ford Focus. And they didn't even, it wasn't a long drive, but we're going to not walk with Nash. I drive him off the hotel. And so Nash was in the front seat of this Ford Focus, and his knees are way up on the dash. He said, "Hey, man, thanks a lot." And ever since I had a few exchanges with him, to try and bring him in for our regular show. Just never worked necessarily, I think. But no, because he was Kevin Nash. And the guys, in the end, I said, "Hey, Kevin, can I get a picture with you?" And the picture I have is me and a zombie in straw and dirt. And Kevin putting a gun in my head.
Yeah.
So I love that. Oh, yeah. Daddy Davis is one of our guys. He plays the world's best father, allegedly. And so he sells t-shirts that are "Who's your daddy?" and Daddy's girl. He's just but he, again, is super, just what a great performer, a wrestler. What a great wrestler. Just a guy who, he's got it. He's got the mustache, and it's just he comes out to the Full House theme song.
That's insane. I'm not gonna lie. If I came out to the Full House theme song, it better be, you know, very
Yeah,
much in
like
character because that
yeah,
is
so
hilarious.
he's really good. But like Kevin Nash is number 2 for sure.
That was number 3.
Number 3. Sorry, no. We got to get to number 2.
You
Sorry.
got to get to number 2. Let's get it.
So number 2 is Bret the Hitman Hart, and there's one of the things that happened a bit. Like Bret left. What? Sorry. What?
How is Bret Hart number 2?
Well, don't worry. Believe me, this is why Bret's number 2. Because there's one number 1. So
okay.
So but Bret
I'm
Hart,
riding with you on this because, of course, I don't want to invoke my opinion on who I should feel like should be number 1 because I think y'all know how I feel about the Hart Foundation. I'm not gonna say nothing else about it. But
it's brilliant, Kareem. It's brilliant. You'd love the gimmick. It's like he's such a good wrestler, and really gets it. So, but Bret Hart, Tornado called me one day and said, "How would you like to bring in Bret Hart to your show?" I said, "What?" Yeah, it's bear shit in the woods. Yeah, exactly, of course. But because I guess Bret was good friends with a guy named Bert the Hurt. And he was a nice guy, sweetheart of a guy. And so Bert kind of owned a promotion that we were kind of working with. And so he was able to get Bret in and make Bret comfortable, and we were able to afford it for Special Olympics. So Bret had come in. I think he was just getting off knee surgery. And Bret left a bit earlier than we had anticipated. So for a bit, I was held a bit of a issue, but as you grow in these, as you grow in these things, you understand that, let's look at the situation. So this is why Bret Hart's number 2, because he impacted a lot of people that weekend. And that's why I look at it. He impacted a lot of people. So Bret had a bit of knee surgery, came in. We did a radio interview in the morning. He was great. Talking to the radio contest winners, got to sit in with them. And Bret took time for them. And I was like, "Oh, Bret, we kind of got to get going." He's like, "No, we're good. We're good. I want to keep talking." And so Bret was like, "Oh," I was like, "Okay." So we were a bit behind for things, but not a big deal. But because Bret was taking time for people, that's what he was doing. And so then we went to the town hall and met with the mayor and a group of Special Olympians. And Bret took time for those kids and signed autographs and are you kidding me? He's Bret the Hitman Hart. And then he I got to spend time with him. I was driving him around for a bit. And we talked a bit of hockey, which was great. He's talked a bit of hockey. And then talk, he was a good guy, very kind of quiet a bit, but really a nice he was a nice guy. And the time I spent with him, he was good, and he signed. He came to our show. He went to visit. We have a military base, 45 minutes away. He went to see the troops. So he was tired. We got to our show, and I thought he was supposed to do something, but it just never got done. But he signed for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. There were people crying when they met Bret Hart.
Did you get starstruck by Bret when you first seen him, or did you kind of lose?
No, I had known Bret before that, so I've gone up to Timmins before that to meet Bret, and asked Bret to do a couple interviews for the show. And I have a picture of him holding up the thing, and there's a great picture floating around the internet of Jake O'Reilly and Scotty the Body dressed as the King because he won the King of Timmins tournament, and Jake and Scotty hopped in, and Bret's kind of looks like Jerry Lawler. Hey, let's take a picture, and they drop in, and so I met Bret then. So, but it's Bret Hart. It's my friend Matt was up, because he was the biggest Bret Hart fan. There was a guy named we have a guy locally named Mike Parnell. Mike's a sweetheart of a guy, just salt of the earth guy. But when we met him, his license plate was Hitman. That was his license plate. He was a huge brand. His wife was like, "Can we do something? Can we get a picture? I want to frame it for or something." I said, "Yeah." Hitman's one of the first guys that's good. And we call him that. We call him Hitman. I said, "You're going to be one of the first guys." And Mike was he could people cried Bret Hart. He was so. And there was a bit of there's been some hit and miss with Bret. I guess other places but. with some folks, but I got to put him number 2 because of who he was, and he did impact a lot of people that day. And he was tired. He was moving sluggish, and but like so I understand. But he was a positive. Like people remember that a lot of people never forget the time they met Bret Hart. And again, it's cool that you're able to help make that happen, and you're cool. Like he treated people well. And that like the fans and they got treated great. And so, but again, I didn't get to spend as much time with Bret, but the time I did spend it. Oh, funny story about Bret, and this is a clean story. I took him out for lunch. I said, "Lunch's on me, Bret." So we went to this little place, and I accidentally spilt water on Bret the Hitman Hart. I knocked the water over, and I spilled it on Bret. So
you spilling water on Bret Hart as a mistake, and him not putting you in the figure four.
Sharpshooter. You would have put me. He should have put me in the sharpshooter.
Nah, he should have put you in the figure 4 first. Then should have put you in the sharpshooter, because the man is the man of 1,000 hosts. The excellence of execution knows anything that is everything about offense. Do we have to have this argument again?
No,
but anyway,
but like I'm just saying, he was like,
but
he was cool. He was cool. He was cool about it. Like so, he was.
Was it like a full glass of water? Because help me understand the context.
Full glass of water in his lap.
So you had Bret Hart walking around looking like a piss.
Oh shit! Yeah, I know. Back to the hotel.
I'm not gonna let you make my man's Bret Hart look bad on this podcast.
No, that was great. That was that I think I look back on the thing with Bret. I have a great picture with Bret Hart. I actually look in good shape. My beard's nice and black and full. I actually look really good. Of course, I'm wearing a pink shirt. I mean,
I have a joke for you.
Yeah.
But it's about your beard being black. But I'll let it go right now. We're gonna keep moving.
But Bret Hart, but that leaves one spot for number 1. And number 1 is, interestingly enough, tonight is his biography on A&E. It's Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And Cody Deaner has a podcast, an outstanding podcast. Wrestling is Life, and it's awesome, and you check it out. And he talks about Ricky Steamboat and meeting him, and because he was a huge Steamboat fan, and I got a chance to bring in Steamboat. I had gotten his number, and just like, hey, Ricky, would you like to come in? And I talked to him a few times, and he was great, like just fantastic. Really set us up to make it a really successful show. But like when we got him, we brought him in and his flight got delayed and it was really annoying. So we got in late and he was kind of grumpy initially, and rightfully so. Like nobody's going to say anything. We're just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Like we were just like, I apologize. Went in the bathroom, put thing in his hair. McCully is with me. Put water in his hair or whatever he had to do. He comes out. He's like, all right, fellas, just want to let you know I'm a little cranky. We're like what kind of guy tells you that? Like, that's an honest guy. Like you can't get any better than that. And so we're going up the escalator, and he says, "You're the promoter?" So yeah. He's like, "How long you been in it?" I said, "I don't know, but 10, 12 years. Like, what does your wife think about it?" Like, she hates it. It's like, I'm surprised. Now, Aaron's grown to appreciate it, but at some point, I may have dedicated way too much time to it. But I think it's all for a good cause. But it was a funny joke. But as soon as Ricky got in the car, it was, hey, let me tell you about WrestleMania 3. Let me tell you about this stuff. Let me tell you this story and that story. He was so great telling stories. And we had Ricky booked for 2 shows. One in a town called Hanover, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away. We had done a couple of shows for the Special Olympics there. And then one in Collingwood. And so Ricky was going to be a manager and then sign autographs and meet people. But I remember telling some of the guys, I said, Ricky likes to tell stories, man. He's going to want to talk. And so he got in with our group. And again, this is how good our group is. It's how good they are. They're just a really, really professional group. And the more he kind of interacted with them, the more he kind of started to get, really feeling it. And he was telling stories about him and Flair going like 59 minutes and whatever. And, just like these great stories. And just the fans seeing Ricky Steamboat. Yeah, like he's the nicest dude in the world. He's one of the and he took time for people. And again, another guy that people are like, holy crap, that's Ricky Steamboat. I have a great photo of me with Ricky in the IC title. But he really did take time for guys and really did like working with our guys. And there was somebody in the ring doing something. And Ricky's sitting at the table and he's like, hold on a second. Goes over. Ricky climbs inside the ring. And is starting to show guys things. And like all the goons were like, hey, get out here. And Ricky gives a 2-hour free seminar to every wrestler on our roster, just about different things in the business. And it's like, and I'm sitting there with my cousin and his son, and I said, this is like Marilyn Lemieux teaching you hockey. Like, that's the level. Like, this is Ric Flair's greatest opponent. He didn't have to do that. He wasn't asked to do that. He wasn't paid to do that. He did that because he wanted to. And I got at the end of the night, he gave a nice toast to the guys in the dressing room, and I was there for it. It was wonderful. Like, he was like, guys, it's so great working with you, and he was really proud. And we had rented a car because I couldn't really drive him back to the airport. We had rented a car for Ricky from this limo, and I said, hey, you're going to be picking up Ricky Steamboat. It was like a stretch that showed up. It was like a stretch. And I didn't ask for that. They're like, I said, oh, I thought we were just getting a town car. He's like, an upgrade for Mr. Steamboat. Like, they did that on their own. And I was like, oh, and Ricky's like, this is like Ric Flair. And so, but Ricky, yeah, and Ricky got in there. Ricky got physical. Like, he got physical. He was in there the night before. He DDT'd our friend Asher. He was in the corner of Cody Deaner both nights, and it was cool for Cody. It's still to this day, I know Cody speaks of it fondly, in that he got to learn from his idol. And they're like, never meet your heroes, but yeah, we met Ricky Steamboat. He was the best. And so, and then the next night, I guess it was Darko taking some chops and Tornado taking some chops. And, but Ricky was just, that whole weekend, man, it was such an experience. Yeah, like, he's amazing. He's unbelievable. Like, he was, and in great shape. Like, he was gray, and he had a great, he was gray, but he was in good shape. My friend said he looked like a gym teacher, and you could tell he took care of himself, but like a great storyteller and just a guy who loved being around wrestling and wrestlers. And I had a nice text exchange with him when he said, John, I said, Ricky, thank you so much. You're an absolute class act. Everybody was in awe the whole weekend. It was just, we appreciate it. And he's like, John, in this time of my career, I'm really happy I have the ability to go visit and work with young talent, especially guys like yours. He's like, keep up the good work. You guys are doing really good things. It's like, come on, that's as good as it gets. You can't get better than that. And it's like, okay, we know, and I'm going to put us over. We know we have a good product. We know our product is good, and we know it. Like, we go into towns, and they've never seen our guys before, and I'm never worried. Like, and that's tough. Like, that's tough. Imagine, like, being a musician going into a town and like where nobody really knows your name. And in some cases, we go to these towns cold, and they used to know some of the guys, obviously, because word gets around a bit. But like, really, these guys go out, and it's like, let's do this, and they do it every time, and they know how to wrestle matches that like cater to the crowd that we were able to acquire. And I mean, like, so I think, that's why we have a good reputation. And that's why guys like Ricky Steamboat and Eric Young is because of the talent that we have in the ring. Like, I think we treat everybody well, because that comes from Tornado too. It's like, you treat people with respect. It comes from me as well. It's like, we want to be honest. We want to be good to do business with. And like, Ricky Steamboat was just he's the best. He was the best. He was just so great. But again, last night, another great experience, And also too, it was cool. They were filming a documentary. I have to put this over. So we had a documentary film crew filming a documentary about our late friend Jesse Scott, who I mentioned on the show.
Jesse,
yes. They're doing a thing about Jesse. So they were there last night, and I think they enjoyed the show. They seem like it. And so we're doing a lot of cool stuff, like Rock Solid Wrestling. Like, I'm happy. I came up with the name years ago. I design our logos. That's kind of how I'm involved still. And I punch out ideas. Oh God. Yeah, full show. Yeah, 15 people. That was not one of the good, well-attended ones. And there's been some of those, and sometimes you get them. Like, sometimes it just doesn't work. And that's, it's not all success stories. Like, we tried Lindsay, the town called Lindsay, twice, and it was just you like to have somebody there to kind of cater, and it was just a little too out of the reach. And we tried, we did it okay. We tried, but it was just, it didn't work out. And sometimes that's the thing. But luckily, we've had more hits than misses. And the guys,
where it goes at.
Yeah, the guys on this list, and like we were able to last night with Jesse. Like, Cody did a nice in-ring promo, just letting the crowd know who Jesse was, because like that was why the film crew was there. So I think he wanted to make sure about to let people know who Jesse was, because he was important to us, and we were able to push out some. They're doing T-shirts. I'm going to share the link on social media. They're doing T-shirts and a GoFundMe to raise money for his family. He had wife and 3 great kids, and I didn't know him well again, but I was happy that in any way that my show could help his family, any way at all. So, because he was one of the good ones. So I had a great time and a great talk with Crazy Steve last night. And, who, if you don't know who he is, check him out. He's fantastic. He's great. Cody Diener, all these guys, they were wonderful, and it was such a good night. But these are experiences I've had in wrestling, and it's real cool. My dad didn't go to many shows after a certain point, because he was just like, I go to sleep at 6. So it's like, forget this. But, and I was his son. He loved it. But I remember when I brought in Bret Hart, he was like, that's really cool. Like, because, Bret Hart was his guy too. Like, he loved it. So, but there's a couple guys. Who's winning? Brandon, who's winning? There's a couple guys that I didn't get to bring in. I had an email exchange with Roddy Piper at one point. No, not email, a text exchange with Roddy. But I could never make it work. Just never got it work. But in the text, he was super professional. That was one of the dreams, was Roddy Piper. That was one of
You can get Roddy Piper to come out. I think
that would have been awesome. That was one of the goals. And of course the Scott Hall thing. But we've got, and all of them have been great. They've all been wonderful experiences, and as a kid growing up who just loved wrestling, to be able to have this, those experiences with those guys, it's like, it's special. And we continue to do it. I'm just about, like, I loved it so much. Like, from the first moment I saw it, it's like, it was the first thing I loved. It was wrestling. And that's why London just tied it in the 3rd. Oh, okay. For the Memorial Cup. So I just, so I loved it, and being involved in some way is cool. And I love it. And it's just like, but it's all about the guys we bring in. We have such great talent. It's unbelievable. So
question.
Yeah.
These experiences that happened between you and Ricky Steamboat specifically.
Yeah.
Was there one specific time where you felt like kind of fangirled over him?
Oh, when he got in the car. Like, when he got in the car, it was like, holy shit. And once he started talking about, like, WrestleMania 3, and then, but Ricky was a guy who wanted to make you feel welcome. Like, that's one of the things. Like, the guys really tried to, like, in most cases, I think everybody tried to make you feel comfortable. And it was like, yeah, it was like it accepted, just accepted you, because you're there, you're paying to bring him in, so you want him to do a good job. So, but you want to be professional about it. You don't, but on the inside, it's just like, holy shit, this is Ricky Steamboat. Like, are you kidding me? But like, you try and keep it professional, and he was, again, he's super great. I just can't tell you enough how awesome he was, and what an impact he made on guys. There are guys who still to this day remember things that Ricky Steamboat told them. It's like, yeah, like, yeah. And as a kid, he grew up playing with his action figure. It's like, what? Why does this happen?
I mean, so collecting action figures, growing up into just kind of understanding what the business was, and understanding some of your favorite things about it. Um, to this day, actually working close to the business and in the business a little bit in your own way, I think kind of tells its own story and says a lot about you as far as how much you really do love wrestling and how much you really actually can say, I don't like this. I actually love this. It kind of gives a little bit of the Jim Cornette response when
I want
you kind of look at it.
I should have said it at the start, as I always like to say this. As Jim Cornette once said, I think, and he was quoting somebody, but I'll quote Jim Cornette. It's all true, give or take a lie or two. But I mean, Jim Cornette called it the classic hanger. Said he was the classic hanger on, him and Bobby. That's kind of what I was. And I'm happy, though, I've been able to learn from some of the good ones and learn things about wrestling and talk to people about wrestling, about, guys, changing stuff. It's like guys giving us tips, say, hey, you might be able to do this and do that. It's like, oh, cool, thanks, and like having like these conversations with these guys who just, like you said, I grew up. I remember Jake the Snake's action figure. I got it for Christmas. It's like, so, and then having Jake being like a super cool guy. And I spent a lot of time with Jake in a car, and he was, it's just late. He was chill, man. He was easy, but like, it's just amazing. It's just been such a cool, life I've had in being involved in wrestling. And it's just like, and I like to talk about it. Like, I love telling these stories because I think they're cool. And I think, I hope they shed everybody in a positive light, because that's everyone I've talked about here is like, it's really, really been super cool, especially like the guys, again, like our local, our guys, our main crew who, I spent a lot of time with. So, but yeah, it's for a kid who grew up loving wrestling. It's been a great deal, man. Great deal.
So I don't have any wrestling stories compared to yours in no capacity of the word. So I kind of live vicariously through some of your experiences and kind of hope one day I can kind of come across somebody and have some of those.
Yeah. I mean,
I've had one.
Yeah.
We talked about, but it's just like,
yeah. And like like I said, I've had lots of experiences meeting wrestlers. Lots of, like Jerry Lawler I met Jerry Lawler at one of the shows, and the king was the king, man. He's easy, very nice, very pleasant, treated you well. I met the Iron Sheik at a show. We went into the Iron Sheik, had everybody in the dressing room, and it was like he was signing autographs, and he was just like, he's what you expect, like, so I've had these cool experiences, and it's just, I don't know how they all happen. Honestly, they just kind of fell into them, but I'm happy they did.
So after today, I want y'all to understand it's probably going to be way more experiences coming from John than y'all know. It's way more in that little think tank of his.
I have another cool thing though. I want to say
this is one of those instances where you kind of have to list them. And this is what today's episode is for. To just give you the opportunity to list them and see exactly how you unfold all the information and how you kind of process yourself at some of the events that kind of took place and made you feel like, this is why I do it. This is why I love wrestling.
But the cool thing is I've done some broadcasting. We do shows on there's a cable cable service provider. They're called Eastlink, and they have these local stations, and one of them's in Sudbury. So we do a show in Sudbury every year. We usually go live. So this, again, I'm doing live broadcasting, which is cool for me. I do my best Jesse Ventura, and my favorite line last year that I did, I loved it, was Tyler Turba, he's a great wrestler, another great guy. Like, again, another guy should be on TV like every week. And he's good size, looks in great shape. Really, really, I think he's really, really does a good job at looking professional. And I got another guy. It's like, how is that guy not got a contract? I don't understand. But but yeah, where was I going with this? Go back to me. I lose my track. Tyler Turvin.
Tyler Turvin.
Oh, my favorite line. So Tyler Turvin, yes, favorite line. So Tyler Turvin. There's Aaron.
Shout out to Aaron, by the way.
Keeping us on track. His thing is, I'm young, fit, and stupid pretty, and he's not lying about that. He's a good looking dude, and he's good. So, being the bad guy, I said, "Oh, Mr. Young, fit, and pretty stupid." I was like, that was my line. I was like, I loved it, but I love doing it because like I did it as a kid and like playing with my wrestlers, and it was like you get to kind of do that and like play a bit of a role. And I work with Adam, who's awesome. Just has a great voice and a great exuberance. And he's easy and he knows like announcing things, so we can, he's great. Yeah, I get to do that coming up, and I get to do a couple other things, promoting some more shows, and I'm gonna keep it going.
Hey, I love it. I think the simple fact that you, like I said, have had these experiences and just kind of being able to kind of just categorize them and get a Baccarin. Jake the Snake.
He did. Like he put the
he bit the Warrior. Put it on there. He wouldn't come off.
Warrior. That's why they started the feud with Savage, because Warrior was supposed to work with him after SummerSlam, and Warrior got fired at SummerSlam. So he ended up working with Savage. And that was freaky. I remember that. And then he threw Elizabeth down, which my mom didn't like. My mom saw that. She's like, I don't like that at all. I was like, Mom, it's okay. I'm like, I get it. Like, I was kind of like, I understood. Like, not that I understood, but I'm like, I wasn't going to be a wife beater. That wasn't in my genes. So I'm like, my mom was worried about that. My mom was worried early about wrestling influenced me in a negative way with the physicality and the violence. And she's being a mom, right? She's trying, but my dad kind of, and now she loves I do the wrestling. She loves it. She thinks it's awesome because I am kind of living my dream in a way. I'm not like, I was never going to be a wrestler. That's not in it. That's not me. And I think that's one thing is like, I don't do this to be a star. I'm not I like doing the commentary because I'm pretty good at it. And I like doing the interviews. I do the interviews well sometimes. So I like playing that because I've always like wanted to be an announcer. So it's nice. It's just a cool thing to do. And, but when I do promoting, it's kind of like, I just like to, just put your head down and work and let the talent speak for themselves. And it's just, you get to work with a lot of cool people and do some cool shit.
So after all these experiences, after all these years of actually working with wrestling, do you see yourself coming to a point to where you're not necessarily as engaged in wrestling as you once were? Or do you feel like now, because you do so much work, you're going to have a whole bunch of time to pay attention to everything?
It's just managing time. I still try and pay attention to some of the stuff going on. Like I said, I think I'm going to try and dig into TNA a bit more. Because again, I have guys, and we were with Josh Alexander before too. He's been on our shows, another class act. He's a great guy to deal with. Super nice, great wrestler, great look, the whole thing. So we got a lot of, like, that's the thing, is like the guys that are coming out of this area are these guys. Like, they're like, we got talent. Ontario has always been one of the untapped markets for wrestling talent. Like, Edge and Christian came out of here, Joe Legend came out of here. Like, there's a lot of wrestlers. Eric Young came out of here, Sean Spears came out of here. Like, all these guys, like, we produce a lot of great wrestlers. And so, yeah, I'm going to try and be involved. I still think we have something to offer. I still think we have, I'll do a plug, Rock Solid Wrestling Fan Club.ca is out there. And it's Rock Solid, hold on. I think it's rocksolidfanclub.ca.
Today, Junior. No, I'm messing with you. But getting it out, we got to get Rock Solid their proper shout outs, simply because, of course, we definitely want people to tap in and be able to look.
Rocksolidfanclub.ca, and it's our Patreon, and you can go on there and you can find some of our stuff, and you can see what we do. We have a bunch of episodes of different things. We're gonna have live events and specials, and maybe keep up on an indie that you guys maybe don't know, but like you're learning through me. Like we do good stuff and good work, and I think we have a product that is it's professional. It's professional wrestling. That's what we do, and I'm happy to be involved in it. And then, like last night, 4,200 for the Special Olympics, $4,200. Like I mean, that's we entertained a lot of people. A lot of people had a great night. Like kids all over the place going nuts. And great matches. Guys coming out doing a great job. Like everybody, all the wrestlers were just did an awesome job. So like it was a fantastic time. Like it was last night was good. Recovery was a little rough. I got a little note of what KC's gonna feel like, so I got to make sure I'm in a bit better shape to handle it. But KC, I won't be hauling chairs. I mean that's the thing. Like it's not glamorous. Like because I had to haul about 200 chairs or something like that. We hauled Brandon, who was listening. He hauled chairs because like they're in this trailer, so we got to like bring them out and put them back, bring them out and put them back. So, but thankfully we had a lot of hands. So last night we got out of there quick. So, but I mean, it's all worth it, right? Like you raise money for a good cause, and that's good karma.
You hauling 200 chairs is insane to me because in my mind, you're like
Fat.
5'6", and just
I'm 5. I say I'm 5'9". I'm going to stand by that. And
well, hold on. You standing by 5'9" and not being 5'9" is going to make 5'9" even more.
Aaron doesn't believe I'm 5'9", and I said I'm 5'9". So listen, I'm 5'9". So I'm not very tall. I'm not.
We're gonna see.
I'm not in very good shape. But like thankfully we had so many. Like we have awesome people around who help. Like really, with the Special Olympics volunteer committee, they run the concession and. We have people hauling chairs. It takes a lot. It's a lot of work, but again, it's all worth it. Like it's just living this kind of life in wrestling has just been so wild, and I've had a lot of cool times. But last night was amazing. Yeah, I can't get over it. But the recovery was, because I tied one on at the end. After I had a couple at the bar, so it was nice.
It's always one of the events, of course.
Yeah.
I think. I think one thing for sure about your experiences that I kind of envy a little bit, and just kind of a little bit, I don't ever say this out loud, and because of course it's not necessarily something I want to kind of, oh man, I'm so jealous of John. No, it's never that. It's just like, dang, I wish I could have had my own.
Yeah.
But being able to be so close and to ask the questions that actually not all fans get to ask, but to see in an experience to have a wrestler kind of do what they do, just live their regular everyday life, and just want you to be involved in it a little bit.
Yeah.
That's an experience within itself that I can say that is more than worth a little bit of money and time or anything that you can actually charge for it, simply because it's just like you wanted this your entire life, now you're living it. And in those moments you kind of have to kind of take yourself out of that and be like, let me just enjoy this for what it is. So I'm kind of envious that you got to enjoy those moments. So I'm glad that you kind of got on here to tell the story of how some of your top moments actually rank. Because of course, some people won't even get to live long enough to go to a show or do anything like that. They'll just love it from afar. And I think it's pretty cool.
I'm lucky, man. Like right place, right time. Right connection, like right people. It's just really, I'm fortunate. And yeah, I get to live some cool experiences that a lot of wrestling fans be like, wow, that's awesome. And don't get me wrong, it's a lot of hard work, and you got to certainly balance between you are a fan, but you are there to make sure that everything goes right. You are there to be professional and make sure that their experience is a positive one. And, like the people in the list that we've kind of been fortunate enough to have is, it shows, I think, that we have a professional promotion, and but it's wild, it's crazy, like to think about it, like going to the bank with $1 million man, like what the hell is that?
Look, somebody leaving with some money, that's all I know.
My mother-in-law's like, did you ask?
If you go to the bank with anybody else, just know you can't ask them to borrow anything. I'm going to the bank with the $1 million man.
Ted DiBiase loved Tim Hortons coffee and loved Tim Hortons donuts. And he came in, he's like, no. And he called his wife and he said, yeah, blah, blah, blah. She's like, how many donuts have you had already? And I think, so he loved Tim Hortons because Ted did a lot of work up here. Ted works with churches and stuff. So he's done a lot of work in Canada. So he spent a lot of time here. A lot of these guys have because Toronto's a regular stop. Like they all had memories of here. So yeah. It's like, that's wow.
I got to get up to Toronto one day just to
see. Get up there. Yeah, you got to come up for a show. Like you got to see one of our shows. You got to come up and see what we do and feel that crowd because man, you'll be like, wow, this is like, it'll get you pumped about. And that's the thing. Support your independent like shows. Support the ones that like are putting on quality stuff because like it's great value and it's good wrestling. And these are the guys that need the support, guys and gals, guys and men and women that need the support. Is the ones working their way up. Where all most of those top people started. People like Seth Rollins and AJ Styles and CM Punk and all these guys. Like, and all the, like they all started on the indies. And like same with I think Bailey too. Like all these people started on the indies. And that's the best. That's where you get close to it, right? You get really close and you really get to up close to that experience. So support your indie.
Support the indie scenes, man. Ladies and gentlemen, the indie scenes is definitely something that can be very entertaining. Now, one thing about the indie scenes that I will say, and I've talked to John about this, in my personal experiences going into some of the indie scenes, you can actually kind of see and say, all right, some of this stuff is not necessarily what I would consider wrestling at times.
I'm not I'm not a fan of the hardcore stuff. Like the smashing the light bulbs and that's not my bag.
I was just telling him the other day, I went to, and I don't go to very many indie shows because of this. There's one experience I went, it was really one of the one-off experiences that I can say I had. It was not necessarily something I signed up to go to, so I was kind of not necessarily looking for any expectation. It was a free show for me. Go in, it's really, not a lot of people, of course, but it's really one of them vibes that, you can feel like it's about to be some wow. So it's just like every time I see like, somebody go to the back and they're getting everything set up, I'm just kind of like, what are they going to do next? First guy brings out a pallet of fucking light bulbs. And I'm just like, why do they need a pallet of fucking light bulbs in the first match? But in every match they use, light bulbs. And it was just like, at what point are we going to sit up there and say, all right, enough is enough with the light bulbs. Let's do an actual move that consists of you not being hit with a light bulb. And it just didn't seem like it went that way. So I'm not saying that some of the indie scenes are terrible. It's just that some of the indie scenes are just not for everybody. And you have to give them all a chance. Yeah. You have to kind of give them all their own due because everybody's show is not the same. But yet everybody has really different talent. Everybody has different kind of, sediments for the night. So just kind of get a good look at the scene of the indie scene and see exactly how it fits.
But check them out. Like give them a really good indie. I think it's something like it's worth it. If you're a big wrestling fan, it's worth your time. If you never spent much time, like a really good indie. So definitely. But great episode. I may have rambled, so I apologize for that. But you get me talking. It's the end of it.
No, it's like that sometimes. Sometimes you got to break it down in the best way possible. And I know sometimes we kind of look into these different stories and it kind of makes you want to give the details. It kind of makes you want to, let people understand how you felt about some of the moments. And I just know, it's a lot. It's a lot. So keep going. I know, like I say, the stories are going to come.
Yeah,
we're doing what you're doing. I want to take 10 to 15 seconds to encourage my partner here for doing the things that he's been doing. You're doing an amazing job in the world of wrestling at this particular point in your life. Yeah. You've taken a good leap in strides of actually doing some of the things that people don't even get the chance to do. So for you to be able to do it, congrats to you, sir. Keep living your dream. Keep living it how you want to live it. Keep doing what you want to do because at the end of the day, the one person that has the best memory about all of this is going to be you. And when you get to sit down and say, I'm old, you get to say, I did everything I wanted to do in life.
Yeah.
So
it's
keep doing it.
Anyway.
Proud of you.
All right. Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in. Appreciate it. And we'll be back. We got some really good guests lined up. Like, oh my God, they're going to be so awesome. So Thanks, everybody.
This is the 5 Count.